Hi there and welcome. It's Lavender Sky Panther with you on Thursday, January 11th, 2024. A special day number-wise because we've got the 111 or January 11. But also, if you add up the date in its entirety, you also get an 11, which you can further take to a number 2. Anyway, if you're interested in the positive aspects of numbers and like a kind of a beginning numerology lesson, you might want to check out the Australian blog site called Joanne Sacred Scribe's Angel Numbers. Just type in any number you're curious about, any number of digits, and it will give you a really nice description, some nice meanings behind the numbers. All right, now for this fun little spiritual card reading, I've set it up where it appears to look like 3 distinct groups, but honestly, after I connected in and drew the cards, keeping each group in mind of whatever, each person would need to hear the most when you find that group, I saw a story unfold. So actually, the cards start to tell a story unified, the whole relating to all of the groups. But I will still nonetheless go over each group in case you want to just pick an individual group. I will probably jump around and cross-reference amongst all of them, just as a little heads up. But here, the first group is clearly has an bit of an aquatic theme. It's the lost civilization of Lemuria, the rise and fall of the world's oldest culture. Sorry about the glare there. And so I decided to pull out the Abalone shell, the Orca agate, and a couple of candles, tea light candles. We've got some crystal quartz, also some Lemurian quartz, okay? Now the second group is called Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. It's a book, I think, written in the 1800s. It might have been published in the early 1900s. And we've got this gorgeous singing bowl from the Himalayas or Tibet. And we've got, I threw down some Ogham, the tree alphabet, carved in these little mini Ogham. And also the Preseli bluestone, because it said that if you tap on it with a mallet on, actual stone slabs out in the Wales, where it is in Wales, you can hear a ringing. Now, I haven't done it, but that's just what is written about it. So that just kind of tied in together. Plus, it's an ancestral stone. Seemed to work with the theme. Then we have the Nephilim Among Us Updated, and it says the identity and origin of the Sasquatch and other mysterious creatures. An amateur researcher's journey in search of the truth by Scott Carpenter. Now, if you're not familiar with his YouTube channel, I highly recommend you go check it out. He has actual documentation footage, walking through the forest with kind of a clever way of setting up cameras where he's been able to capture on camera a whole bunch of, on video and stills, a whole bunch of beings. I won't say creatures, but rather beings in this case. Anyway, go check it out. Now, a little note, I don't necessarily agree with the term Nephilim. I have not read his book yet, so I want to get through it before I comment on that. But a lot of people have very different ideas of what that might mean, so I want to check it out. But for me, with the Sasquatch world, I wouldn't really tie it with that word in particular, but and the meanings behind it, where they can go. But we'll see. And I'll come back and circle back and comment further if I feel like it in a future show. In the meantime, I just decided to throw in some black tourmaline from California, since, Sasquatch and one of the original films came out from there on the West Coast, and I threw in some red jasper and some sassafras root just to set the scene and the tone for these 3 groups. Now, again, when I was shuffling the cards and connecting in, I did ask specifically, what does each group need to hear right now? And as I drew the cards, though, and placed them down, it became apparent to me that all the groups kind of spell out, not spell out, but tell a kind of a continuous story and relate, as maybe moving along sequentially as a story or a journey. So this overall reading is probably going to be called something like The Journey. So let's, I'll try to read it that it can be, sorry, give me a moment. I'm going to try to read this so it can be viewed both ways, as either just that's your group if you pick 1, 2, or 3, or as, a continuous story moving along. Okay, so let's go what we'll call group 1 for now. The deck I used, actually I was going to use one, but then just by the subject with Lemuria, which, by the way, is a civilization that predates Atlantis. Maybe overlap, again, I've got to read this book to see what their take on it is with their evidence. But Lemuria is also referred to as Mu. And anyhow, we'll get into, I guess, the dates and what predates what. But supposedly, my limited understanding so far is Lemuria was the original peoples, the original galactic beings, if you will, that had a beautiful kind of like the true Garden of Eden, if you will. And then from there was Atlantis, and then from there a whole host of things happened. But anyway, we'll get into that. Maybe that'll be a whole standalone show, perhaps, if I get to it. Otherwise, let's just kind of move along. Maybe go with me there, take it on face value that Mu or Lemuria came before Atlantis, or at least maybe concurrently. Okay. So anyway, in saying, with that being said, I was just going to go with the Mermaid Tarot, just with the sea theme. But then I realized, hey, no, I've got an Atlantis deck. So I forget the exact name. I'll look it up and put it in the description area below. So the first card we'll go with. Oh, and by the way, here's this gorgeous piece of Lemurian quartz that I put next to it because it reminded me of this sword on this Knight of Swords. And this is a piece of gorgeous Lemurian quartz. And I don't normally, promote things per se, but I can absolutely tell you that the quality and purity and just the beautiful vibe off of these crystals is so amazing. I do want to mention, go check out sacredgemstone.com. Kelly there has gorgeous, gorgeous crystals. And actually another one's going to be coming up in group 3. And I highly recommend them. They just have an otherworldly feel, just beautiful. Anyway, I put that one down because it reminds me of the sword going straight up and down, and the sword itself is kind of shining. And this is Knight of Swords. It has this knight looks very feminine, however, I'll just say, just the way everything looks. And if anything, when you look from overall from a distance, it almost looks like, that's the knight and this is like a big dress. But it kind of doesn't matter. Male or female energy doesn't really matter. The thing that matters is that we're talking about somebody is standing up and ready to fight something, coming in on the power of a wave as well. And that sword is aligned straight up to also draw in power from the ethers. But even though this is kind of like a knight ready to fight, it's also almost like, I want to say almost like a martial art type of fighting, where it's more about the art of how to hold the blade and present yourself and the movement and the flow of it rather than actual fighting. And I thought, what the heck are we getting to in this card then, the meaning, if that's where we're going with it? I mean, everything is so delicate. It's more like a dance that this knight is doing. And so then I thought, okay, we need a clarifier. So we're going to pull this one out of the Atlantis deck, which is just the major arcana in this particular deck. And we have a number 15, which can also be a 6. So we pan down. We're clearly in this underwater world of Atlantis. And it's depicted as Atlantis anyway. And then what do we see? We see the devil. But don't worry, we'll look at what this really is all about. And we have some, hang on. Sorry about the fuzz out. Hey, okay. We have addiction, ego, control, restriction, materialism. Okay, that's what they're referring to in this one. So then I thought, okay, that makes sense. The devil in this card and the Knight of Swords, it's talking about you're fighting addictions or you're fighting yourself. That's why there's no real opponent seen in the scene. This knight's just kind of looking off. It's kind of like a more conceptual battle, a battle of bigger things, bigger concepts. Much bigger existential kind of implications. So especially if there's an addiction involved, and I'll just take it to mean that it's you, or, I'll throw myself in there too. We all have either certain kinds of addictions, ego issues, maybe control issues, or false beliefs can also be like the devil messing with your mind. Maybe we're looking at things maybe not in the true way and looking in a more negative way. So anyway, I'll just say it's kind of like an internal battle maybe with this deck, all right? Now, I'm also going to read another meaning straight out from the companion guide to this. Probably will take us in a slightly different direction. Bear with me. I'm going to read it off to the side, off the camera, and then just, sorry, I'm going to show you this book. It's a big book, kind of unwieldy, but I'm going to read off because sometimes, like what just happened with that fuzz out, it's going to happen if I try to put it in the viewfinder here. So let's see. When you get this card, it says, you are being asked to commit to an idea. This is not just any idea, but one that will move you closer to your purpose or life stream. You must be willing to give this idea your full and clear mind and be willing to work with it each and every day, as only this level of commitment will earn you the results you require. Okay, that's if the card's in upright position, which is what this card did come out. But I do want to read the reverse position as well from this companion book. Sorry, I'm shaking all over the place here. I realize the camera's bouncing around. All right. If it were reversed, but I believe both apply in this group. You and your idea are out of alignment if you're getting this. Stop trying to control the terms and conditions of your mind and instead clear it and open up to the possibility that awaits you. Ride the energy of the wave like the night. Don't try to control it or you shall sink. Okay, so there's so many meanings and messages going on here. It's true. If we put up our own resistance too fiercely, we will sink our own ship and we will cycle around and around, kind of like, let me get my little pointer, kind of like the circular motion of this wave. You get that nice long tunnel what the surfers do, and eventually it crashes in and among itself, right? So the thing here is, there might be a solution to overcome some of the addictions or some of the ego or getting too stuck in the mind. And they're talking about just getting one idea and sticking with it, right? Another mini idea is if you're kind of in this internal world too much and it is sinking you down, thoughts are getting dark or whatever. For me, that means you're just, and that applies if I'm talking about myself too, we're just in our mind too much. We're letting it control. And the moment we can drop down into our heart space, get out of the mind, we're already going to be on our way to getting out of this vicious cycle. So a great thing to do, I know everyone talks about it, is get out in nature. The entire theme of this entire reading has nature involved with it, whether it's forest or the sea or the sand and sea. But just get out, even if you're in an urban landscape and, you're trying to find something to connect into with nature. You might find a little weed breaking up between the sidewalk. There's always a way, look up at the sun, even though I have my issues with it. If you look at all of my sky shows of what's going on with the sun and the quality of light is not the natural true sun. But anyway, do what you can to connect in with the elements and to try to get yourself out of this darker, cyclical darkness of thoughts, or exercise in any number of ways. A lot of people, and I know it is true, we get into these kind of darker modes and addictive in the thinking where the mind just looping around and around and getting nowhere, is to do some exercise, even if it's just walking. And if you say, well, I don't have, I can't really walk, well, like get on the ground and use like resistance bands or something, use your own weight to start pushing and pulling and moving things carefully. Otherwise, get somebody to help you and just go sit outside, even if you're just sitting in a chair, be in contact with nature somehow to break this cycle. And even if it's starting to happen to you at night and you're like, oh, I don't feel so safe going out, perhaps you live in a rough neighborhood or something, then guess what? You can take an outside adventure by reading a book. I highly recommend getting good old-fashioned, paper books with ink over anything digital. Remove digital from yourself, get away from the phones and any electronics. Get them away from you if you're in this kind of a state. Really, literally, put those in a different room. Don't be in a room with a flat screen or any kind of electronics digitally. And, even if you just do that, separate from that and then read a book. If you can't read, I'm not, no judgments, it happens. For any number of reasons, even if it's just vision and eyesight or you never learned, get audiobooks then. I know I just said ditch the electronics, but in that extreme case, then fine. Maybe, pull something up on YouTube. You don't have to pay for it. If you want to pay for some of these services that give you readings of books straight out, you can do that. But otherwise, there's a ton, I think, still on YouTube where you can look around and you can hear somebody reading a book to you. If you don't know where to start and like, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but I have no clue, that obviously the best way to start is to find something you're interested in, or just probably more often than not, something has come to you on your little radar to read, but you just kind of neglected it. Just be very paying attention to what words or things come up in your world And there might be a little buzzword or trigger in there for you to go read more or go seek out more information, like I said, even for free on a platform like YouTube or whatever. Now, I can tell you, I don't know if they still do it, but if you're totally lost and have no way for a starting point, the obvious is going to be look at any one of these books that I'm going to show coming up, or also, the last time I checked, there was a guy who read word for word a small little book. It's like 56 pages, but fascinating topic about the inner earth, and it's called The Smoky God or Voyage to the Inner Earth, I believe, or Inner World. Have it on one of my previous shows. If I can remember, I'll put it in the description box below. That's a immediate go-to, and man, how interesting. Is there an inner earth? Well, you can read this story, this account of a man and his son, actually from the son's point of view, who report that, the son did anyway. If you read it, you'll know why, or listen to it, that of actually being and finding an entrance to the inner earth after voyaging off northward from Stockholm or somewhere in Sweden. So anyway, it's very interesting. I've read that. There's a lot of credible things in there that they have me convinced that was a credible story. But anyway, see what you think maybe. The point is, get your little looping mind too, that's just kind of circling around and cycling around in this darkness to keep us addicted and keep us, ever focused on no solution, looping. I feel it. I hate to even talk about it. Best way to break that cycle, break that chain, is get some fresh air, even if you just step out for a moment. And if that's not enough, get a book. I'm telling you, get a black and white print book and start reading it, because that reading is going to distract you from many of these crazy thoughts going on that you want to break free from. And by reading it, you just might come up with a new idea that other companion guidebook was telling you, just to focus on the one. Keep it simple. This knight has one sword, and it's headed straight up to try to receive some truth. That sparkle is that divine inspiration that might just come down your way if you give what I've just talked about a chance. Okay? Maybe at the very least, go pick up a crystal, Lemurian quartz, or whatever calls to you, and just hold it and just ask for help if you need it to break the cycle here. All right? If you are finding yourself in an addictive state or dealing with anybody whom you love who is dealing with addictions, there's so many numerous kinds. And yes, the evil that is trying to control everything is absolutely baiting people and pushing through, whether it's, medical drugs, I'll just say out there, or, on the streets, drugs, alcohol, of course, some type of evil. The thing here says the rise and fall of the world's oldest culture. Something is absolutely trying to break us all down from within through these awful addictions and getting people hooked, so that it brings the fall of our culture that, we know. So we need to stand up and counteract that. It's going to be each of our own job to break that chain, get rid of that evil, raise our swords, bring in the light, and go forward in a better way. Okay, so I wish all of you well, whether you're the one who is addicted or the one who's trying to help an addicted loved one. I really do truly send you all of the love in the world and upliftment, that you come to a harmonious way forward with it all. Okay. And speaking of that, the way forward, that brings us to the second group, and the card is the journey. So to start back up with a little backdrop for it, it's Baird T. Spalding's Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Now, it's pretty fascinating what goes on. This is a book of 6. This is volume 1. And I believe in volume 1, maybe a little bit in volume 2, this has a tie-in with the ancient past here of Lemuria, for obvious reasons. If we're looking at kind of like the Himalayas, I think that's Mount Kailash, I forget how it's said. And also this ties into the Sasquatch, because there are reports of the wild man or Yeti in this book. So anyway, and this is, back in the 1800s from the accounts in this book. Anyway, this is a fascinating book if you're interested. I did touch on this before in a previous show, probably way back at the beginning of a Sky show. Anyway, interesting metaphysical kind of book, but a group goes off into obviously the Far East, what we call the Far East. And I'll just say that there's a very interesting section in there about adepts and what an adept is and what an adept can do. And that there are a handful of them on this planet, and they're humans, but are fully in touch with their superpowers, if you will, the kind of the Christ powers of what Jesus could do, that's adepts are totally in touch with that and can do it too. Things like walking on water or walking through a wall or pulling, a coin out of the ethers, that type of thing. It does relate to this because if you look at other YouTube channels, such as, well, this is one, we'll get to it, but another YouTube channel by Sasquatch, Ontario with Mike Patterson. He also talks about things that the Sasquatch people can do and how they can apport things and all kinds of things. So all of these in a strange way, beautiful, magical way, are interrelated. But anyway, if you're just focusing in on group 2, the singing bowl is a beautiful thing. If you don't own one, I highly recommend you at least get one of them. It not only can harmonize and make you feel good. You can take them through each room if you feel like there's bad energy, and you can just, hit it and make it sing through each room. And it can balance some things out. It also can balance things out within our own body. And it can also bring some things to harmony. What I'll do is phrase it this way, since we know how highly censored this platform is. What I will say through direct experience of my own with somebody in my family suffering from a dis-ease, if you will, the singing bowl can completely harmonize certain conditions in the body, but that involves a whole bunch of things happening to help see that happen. So I'll just say, for now, we won't go there, but for now we'll just say there's so many that have beautiful tones. Each bowl has a different frequency. This one happens to be metal, made out of metal. Some are made out of crystals. I haven't tried it, just not holding it in my hand, but you see it has a nice ring and harmony to it. So anyway, it's just a nice thing, I think, just to have on handy around the house for any number of reasons. And then I think, did I talk about the Preseli bluestone, and I think the amethyst off to the side, and the mini Oghams? If I did, I apologize. I've recorded this a couple of times and I don't remember if I covered it. The Preseli bluestone also has a ringing tone to it. Supposedly, if you strike a big slab of it out in its raw elements out in Wales, in the Preseli Hills or Preseli Mountains, it supposedly has a tone. Anyway, okay, let's get to the card. So this card comes from, well, you know what? I'll put it in the description box below, but it's I think the Mystical Shaman Oracle deck. So here we have a number 29, or that can also be, guess what? You guessed it, an 11, or a number 2. So we have this owl kind of either as a headdress or morphing with this human here below with the sun behind it. And then we have maybe a shield on this person's back, or maybe that's like the ecliptic form of a sun. And we have all kinds of interesting things going on where the hands are almost morphing into feathers and wings, and all kinds of things are going on. And it's called The Journey. And I started off saying that I think this overall reading will be called The Journey, because when I zoom back out, take the overall bigger picture on everything, much like life, we can be like zoomed in and focused, purely on ourselves and how we're feeling, just be stuck in our mind, or that like forms a little heart. If we try to get out of the mind and come down into the heart space, we can be in more harmony and the journey becomes much easier. But anyway, when I look back and zoom out, this really is kind of like the journey. If we've been in a dark place, or we're battling, where we are, we're kind of questioning our own existence, having real existential moments, and we just want to break out of some stagnancy perhaps and get going along on the journey. This point of the journey would be, kind of the growing after we've wrestled with this battle of, are we in 3D or are we in 5D, or are we in both, or who are we? Who am I? Who are we really? What, kind of, I know I feel like I have superpowers within me. Why do I dream of flying? I just feel like I can fly, right? When we look at this owl. And then we're still, we're moving along this spiritual journey to really discover some truths. And, we'll get to this book where, it does say, in search of the truth. But anyway, in this journey, this is kind of the point along the way where we are maybe kind of master and student all in one. and are, testing out some of the abilities, knowing that we can be very grounded at one moment and be totally in a different space, whether it's astral traveling or just kind of, gazing, doing some sun gazing or soft-eyed meditation, and then we can be in a totally different plane of existence when we do that. And then we get to a point where we realize we are everything and all of it and the all that is, because that is who we are. That is the God spark within, and we cannot be but that. So as God is everything, everywhere, at all times, so are we. And sometimes we just need to, again, get out of the mind. It gets a little murky in there, and drop into the heart space and lead life from there to really know the absolute and loving power of the all there is, and live in unity with each other, not be fractured in the mind that takes us away from being connected into all of life and with each other, and get to a peace of a state of inner peace and harmony, so that we can then really connect into everything, right? Anyway, so when we get into some of the symbolisms, we do have that owl, which I've covered in previous sky show before at the intro, that, what the connection might be between owls and ETs. Another direction of that owl symbolism is with Athena. And what did Athena do? I believe it was Athena. Correct me if I'm wrong out there. I think it was Athena who had the symbol of the owl, even depicted on coins, attributed to her. Supposedly, she could actually transform into an owl itself. So there's a lot of meanings, behind this. And what did she do when she was upset? She would upset with humans, let's just say, or at least there were some nasty little lessons coming from her, that I think she transformed the beautiful maiden who was in distress, and made her into the Medusa because she was jealous or had some like petty rage issues. She also turned somebody else into a spider, where we get the arachnid name from. I think her name was Arachne or something like that. Anyway, this world of jealous and vengeful gods, we got to really look back into that too. That's why this book is very interesting, with the lost civilization of Lemuria, and in conjunction with that, if we talk about Atlantis, where some of these Greek gods, so to speak, really just beings that had kind of like a god complex. Talk about on this card from group 1, ego, control, restriction, and all of that. Some of them might have been merely these galactic beings who were calling themselves gods, so that opens up a whole nother interesting territory to look at. But for right now, for group 2, and just kind of staying more focused on that, the journey, also might invite you, because I did set out kind of an ancestral tone here with the Preseli bluestone can be tied more to like a druid idea in the Stonehenge, because that is a stone used in Stonehenge, and the Ogham sticks too. And then we've got the Tibetan bowl for that ancient culture, and the mountain kind of air temple idea, or wind, this is very much about all of the elements. I think this just is maybe an invitation to get some type of ancestral stone, or maybe a stick, or something that represents ancient wisdoms to you, and simply allow yourself to meditate or fall asleep with something like this at your side, at your near your head where you're sleeping, and maybe consciously ask to connect into the ancestors and see if you're shown anything that can be useful in the world for yourself today and for everyone else. And that's all I'm getting for that for right now. Now, the journey will lead us then on further if we're going to look at this all together, or if you're just coming for group 3, here we are. And I'll repeat it because I'm pretty sure I did cover this, but again, forgive me, pardon me, I've done many takes on this. So this group is the book, The Nephilim Among Us, in the background, updated, the identity and origin of the Sasquatch and other mysterious creatures, and it is an amateur researcher's journey in search of the truth by Scott Carpenter. Now, I highly recommend you go check out Scott Carpenter's YouTube channel. He has some amazing research that he's done out in the woods himself, with cameras positioned in a certain way that some of these beings might not really catch it that he was filming them. And they do appear and pop up and are very clear in the videos. I have not read this book yet, so I'll check back in once I have. But anyway, do go look at that site. He even has a strange being in a portal, I think, on the shorts. Don't just look at the videos, but also catch some of the shorts. I highly recommend you catching his documentation. Okay, as I talked about, there's sassafras root here. I believe I mentioned it already, black tourmaline and some red jasper. And so we've got a very earthy vibe here. And let's see what the card is. So the message here is simple. And I did take it from the Answer is Simple deck. And it says, open your heart. And I believe, what number do we have? It's hard for me to see, 15 or number 6. We've got butterflies, which, we talk about often as being a symbolism of transformation. I almost said transportation. Maybe for really teeny tiny fairy and a very large butterfly, that would be transportation, right? Anyway, hold on one second. Okay. But anyway, open your heart. And you know what? That is beautiful symbolism. Forget about even the transformation part. With the way the wings, form, they make this nice, almost like a V, like if we were a human there with wings, that would be like us throwing our arms up and making a nice open gesture. Even the antennae are, like a V to receive stuff in, not so much in the transmitting, but is in the receiving in down into this little butterfly body, the core of it, right? So open your heart, and it leads me to say also, and open your arms, open them wide, and also open your mind wide open that mind, because then you will see things like Sasquatch, and even UFOs. Yes, I'm based in Miami. We've had this whole hullabaloo, if you will, come up over Miami Bayside and what they were calling 8 to 10 foot tall strange creatures and beings. Well, anyway, that just reminds me, yes, there are actually 8 to 10 foot and far beyond it creatures and beings on this planet, whether they're in our dimension or other dimensions. People now are starting to see them more, whether they are coming more and more into our view, or whether it's more and more our view is getting expanded by some upgrades coming on the planet. It's probably a combination of both. But whatever the case, more and more people are talking about it and recounting that they've had experiences, seeing Sasquatch, seeing what they call dogman or werewolf, so many other beings out there. And there's so many podcasts and channels dedicated to this now. And I will tell you, I have already made it clear, yes, I've had a Sasquatch experience back in the 80s. Actually, now that I've looked at other channels too and listened to what a lot of people are reporting on, and again, you can tell when people are credible and telling the truth and when they're not. And most of these accounts are absolutely credible. What's happening is, including with my own experience, is when you've had an experience, especially if it's years and years ago or when you were a small child, there was kind of like something done to the mind where it suppressed or put that, seeing of this being way back in the back of your mind and kind of shut off, kind of put dormant so you can't access it. Now, just recently, for me personally, I didn't even think about my encounter, and it was very real and very palpable, very, it's actually probably the most terrified I've been in my life. But after I realized what went on, it was just kind of like erased from my memory in that moment. And then once I realized what was really going on, I only came into that realization a few years ago. Suddenly, and especially now, there's a reason why it's happening now for a lot of people. We're suddenly kind of waking up and realizing, wait a minute, I had a Sasquatch encounter. Why did I just forget about it for all these years? Why is it just coming on the forefront of my mind now? So anyway, there are plenty of excellent channels that talk about the reality and existence of these beings. There's Australian podcasts, also, of course, plenty of U.S., YouTube, and others. And if you want to know any specifics of any of them, feel free to write me at my email. I'll put it in the description area below. Otherwise, I have touched on some really great channels, podcasts, radio broadcasts, a bunch of sources with legit, credible evidence of the Sasquatchy people and other beings. Okay? So getting to that, after talking about all of that, it is said that some of these beings, although they are extremely advanced and definitely interdimensional and other powers and capabilities that we would find pretty extraordinary is what they possess. But they do also, apparently in communication, like to keep things simple, even though they are seemingly very advanced beings. So the keeping it simple just reminded me, to go with this, the Answer is Simple deck. But keeping it simple doesn't mean that these beings are simplistic by any means. However, when you're dealing with good-hearted ones and ones that are looking out for mankind, so to speak, you can apparently just feel like an incredible love coming out of these beings. Now, of course, we all talk about it in this kind of community. There seem to be there are good ones, there are bad ones. So, of course, if you get that one that is pretty hostile or angry, that's one to kind of steer clear of, and maybe isn't talking about the warm and fuzzies here, right? But for the most part, we're just talking about ones that are either benevolent or, just going about their business like you or I would in this world, and not looking for trouble, but not wanting trouble to find it either, right? But the message here is, have an open heart and an open mind, like I said, to this whole world of these kinds of phenomenon happening. And these just straight up, actually not even phenomenon, just facts of beings that exist on this planet, and we've just been lied to all our lives and told they don't, and you're crazy if you believe in it. Well, now is a beautiful age of the Great Awakening and truth coming to light, and the darkness can no longer suppress it. So there. Anyway, back to this card. I want to focus on this gorgeous crystal. This also came from sacredgemstone.com. I highly recommend it because the purity and the vibe coming off of the crystals sold there are amazing. But anyway, find it wherever you wish. It's not saying just one or the other, but I'm just saying I happen to know for a fact the vibe off of these crystals from that source are incredible. This happens to be a phantom quartz or a forest quartz. So I invite you to look up all of the spiritual meanings and healing meanings perhaps behind the forest quartz crystal. They're amazingly beautiful. Okay. So for group 3, again, I would just say, if you're here, you probably already have an open heart and open mind. But also remember, if you do any type of consulting with spiritual guides or psychics or mediums, if you go in and do a session with the intent, or even past life regression, I guess, those types of things, or QHHT sessions. If you go in with an open heart and an open mind, and you can just say, yes, please let me know what I need to hear, kind of talking to, in meditation or prayer to your higher self or to God or source or whatever you're going to pray to. Just say, yeah, it's my intent that, let me know and hear whatever I need to hear right now. And when you're asking for that, just keep your mind and heart open, and you will discover some beautiful messages and things, right? So I guess that's about all. I wanted to tie a little more in on group 3, but I'm not getting it. So you might want to visit groups 1 or 2 if you just chose by group. And otherwise, just you can see where my little reading is going to take me in the next several months, probably by the time I get to them. But anyway, and if you have any ideas or any books or things that you find interesting that might relate into this little theme for this reading, feel free to put it in the description box below. All right, well, that's it for now. I wish all of you tremendous peace and love and a very happy 111, apparently. Lavender Sky Panther. Bye.